Yeah, hi again. This is Scott Nachatilo, and I'm the host of the Your OKC Property Manager podcast. The podcast is for landlords and real estate investors, and I'm always bringing in experts in various facets of real estate. Today I've got with me Randy Wilson. He's with Spartan Construction. Randy's a general contractor, and Randy, can you kind of let our listeners know, like, what is it that you do, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, like I said, Randy Wilson, owner of Spartan Construction. We are a general contractor, mainly focusing on exterior work is kind of our niche and where we like to stay. We do some interior remodel stuff, but we feel like our best offerings to customers are probably on the exterior side of things. So we've been in business since 2020 is when we started. Um, and, we focus on homeowners. Specifically, we do commercial stuff, but we like the smaller projects on people's homes and investors, residential stuff.
What did you do before you started this company? What kind of work did you do? How'd you get into it?
Well, I was in oil and gas industry for almost 25 years. All I did is, as soon as I graduated high school, I went to work in the oil field and really enjoyed it for the most part. But about 2020, it had gotten pretty stale, and I was just looking for something else. Too young to retire. And so I wanted to do something for myself and for my family and not just work for somebody else and just trade time for money. I wanted to try to build something, and I had a little bit of a construction background, and that's where we took it.
Tell me a little bit about the types of projects you've done. Let's say in the last 3 months. Just like what? Give me an example of just some of the projects you've done.
Well, so I would say we just finished one up, but it got extended. So we had a customer that had a really nice house out in the country in Morrison, Oklahoma, actually. And the, the wife had just recently retired, and now she's got her checklist of things that she wants to start updating on. So it had some older post on the front porch. It's kind of a 2-story ranch style type house with this big front porch on it. So we tore all that out and installed some cedar posts and stained them. Did the same thing on the back. Replaced all of the gutters around the house. Kind of updated things. Now, since we've finished that, she now wants us to come back and replace the siding on the front of the house and go with a different style. And of course, we'll have to paint that, and replacing all the trim around the garage doors and the faux gable vents on the gables, and staining all of those to match. And she now has a laundry list of things that she wants us to do to update it. So that's turned into a pretty good project for us. And those types of things, that's what we really enjoy doing. It takes us a couple of days, and we're out of there, and the customer's happy, and we're adding a lot of value to their home. So
Okay.
that's probably one of the most recent ones that stuck out. Just what we thought was just going to be a quick, easy project has turned into a longer project. So love those.
What are some other projects you've done recently?
Uh, well, yeah, we are pretty busy, so I'm trying to think. We do a lot of roofing work, repairs and replacement. We actually got a couple of those going on as we speak today. Let's see here. Exterior paint seems to be really popular right now. For the last month or so, it seems like I'm keeping crews pretty hooked up from one job to the next, just updating the paint colors. People are are wanting to go more modern. A lot of brick painting, brick. These older homes. One way to houses built in the 70s and 80s. That's become extremely popular. Kind of uh, updating to a more modern look is just taking some of the old red and brown brick and painting it, you know, gray, white. Yeah, we've even done one black. Believe it or not, the person wanted the entire house blacked out. So that was interesting for sure.
Do you do just bigger projects or like a mix?
Oh, I try to help anybody that needs anything done. I mean, there are some projects that come our way that are just so small that they don't make sense. I want to be fair to everybody, and there's got to be a good ROI on the person, whether it's a homeowner wanting something done or a property investor wanting to do something. It needs to make sense for the money they're spending, and sometimes are there are those small projects that just wouldn't make sense for us to do. But I have a good network of referral partners that I will refer people that I know that do great work, and some of it's a handyman, some of it's just a contractor that focuses on nothing but small jobs, and we'll refer those out. But we try to stay medium to larger size jobs,
Okay.
and that's always relative. But it don't necessarily have a dollar amount on it per se. It's just kind of we take it to each individual project as it comes and see if it makes sense for us, and most importantly, if it makes sense for the customer.
So on a bigger project, or I mean, do you manage all the subcontractors, or how does that work?
Uh, yes, I have a couple of guys that work directly for me, and then we have some stuff and they do most everything. There are a few things that we do sub out on especially on take a full interior remodel. We're not going to touch electrical or plumbing or heat and air stuff.
Hmm.
Those are licensed trades that by law you have to have a contractor's license in that specific trade, obviously, to be able to touch. And changing out a light plug, probably not that big a deal. But if it's a rewire of a house or changing out a heat and air system, yeah, we're going to sub that out. And I do oversee that. I'm on the job site every day, overseeing the progress and forecasting of where we're going to be and communicate with the customer what to expect and the timelines.
Like when landlords are out there trying to hire a contractor, what are some of the pitfalls? How would you recommend they like things to look for when they're out there trying to find a contractor to do a remodel project for them?
Well, it's Scott, it's 2025, and research is on your phone or on your computer, and Google is your friend. You can look up somebody and see if you know. I would say most, if not, I would say most. I wouldn't go as far as say all, but I would. A big majority of contractors have some sort of online presence, and they have a Google page. And first things first. I mean, check reviews. That would be the the low hanging fruit. Ask for references. I mean, that's still a thing. I gave a customer a reference just yesterday, from a previous customer that was in a very similar situation as she was in, and she just was very uneasy with the process because she didn't know what was going on. And so I gave her a reference to her previous customer, um, who we were able to help out. So you can ask for references. Still, that's still a thing that I every once in a while have somebody do. But as far as pitfalls, focusing too much on price, what this is going to cost me. Um, the cheapest contractor is usually the most expensive contractor. Usually, not always. There are some guys out there that do some good work, and they're honestly they're not charging enough for the quality of work that they do. The problem with that is if you can't afford to stay in business, if you can't make a living doing what you're doing, there's nobody to stand behind the work if you ever have any issues, and that's something that people need to understand.
So how does the cheap bid end up being the most expensive? How do you mean by that?
Material, cutting cost on material is one thing. Then again, that usually it comes back to after the fact. Maybe there wasn't clear communication of what was expected for the work to be done, and so then you turn into, oh, I didn't know you wanted that done as well, and that's going to add X amount to the cost of the project. So what you originally thought was the cheaper bid maybe didn't encompass the entire scope of what the customer is expecting to be done, or the quality of which they were expecting it to be done.
I think they call that change orders in the right.
Well, yeah, yeah, and change orders happen. And I hate getting into this situation, but I had to tell a lady this the other day. She had an issue, and she said, "What's this going to cost?" And I said, "It's going to be between X and Y." And she said, why such a broad scope?" And I said, I can't see what's behind this wall, and we know there's a water problem, so there could be no issue behind here because we don't know exactly how long this has been going on, or this could all of this everything in this wall could be need to be removed, and that's why such a broad scope. And I hate getting into those types of projects because I don't like telling people they're going to have to pay more than what they originally thought. Sometimes that's unavoidable. I don't have X-ray vision to see inside of a wall to see what's going on. So we do our best to try to mitigate that. But yeah, sometimes there are change orders. But back to what you were saying, the cheaper contractor, everybody's heard horror stories of guys not finishing, or taking money and not, taking deposits and not showing up, things of that nature. And you got to be leery of that. Again, go back and check the reviews. So, uh, I promise you, if a contractor took somebody's money and didn't show up to do a job, they're probably gonna, you're probably gonna see a 1-star review on their Google page. Would be my guess.
Right.
Uh,
Randy, when you're doing a project for someone, how do you stagger out the payments? Like, do you ask for some money up front, and then like how do you do that usually?
Sometimes it really honestly depends on the project and whether or not something is a special order. Um, if we have to special order certain materials for a job where the supplier's not going to let us return them if something goes wrong, then yeah, we're going to take a deposit on that. But typically, we take again, it's based on the customer and what they're wanting done. If it's a small project, it's a $5,000 paint job. I'm not taking a deposit on a $5,000 paint job. I'm still kind of a handshake guy. I've never not been paid on a project. I'm not taking a deposit on that. You just pay me when we're done. You know, maybe that's going to burn me someday, but it hasn't yet. So I'm going to stick with it till it burns. Now, if we're talking a $20,000 to $30,000 project, we're gonna plan out and go over that with the customer, the phases of the project, and we will have um, payment schedule within our contract that outlines this amount is due at the completion of this particular phase. And we don't continue to the next phase until we do have a check. Um, that usually it works out fairly simple.
Okay.
And it's flexible. Like I said, it depends on the size and scope.
I've heard it said that you get a really good, maybe the biggest return on investment when you're doing like a kitchen remodel and bathroom remodel. Would you agree with that, or?
Well, that depends on what you're doing with your property. If you're a homeowner and you're you know wanting to upgrade some things, then absolutely, kitchens and bathrooms, kitchens and master bathrooms specifically, are probably your best ROI. Updating those things, they're going to help the house sell better. If you're an investor, and looking to do certain upgrades to a house to maybe increase your monthly rent, uh, there's no substitute for square footage and more rooms. That's what's going to bring more rent, right? That's what we see as maybe additions or things like that, or converting certain rooms into to another bedroom, or potentially adding a bathroom, things of
You mean
that.
like a garage conversion type thing?
Yeah, that's the most popular, right? Because it's the cheapest, and that's most, especially some of these homes, older homes that are like one car garages. And today's vehicles don't really fit in those one car garages. You'll see that a lot, and like I said, it's the most cost effective because you can add, um, you know, most of these garages are 200 square feet, and so you can add another 200 square foot of livable space. You extrapolate that out on your cost per square foot per rent, and do the math on it, and that's from an investor, that's going to be your best bang for your buck for sure.
When you're going in as a landlord, you like a lot of times you can't really just gut the kitchen and like, I mean, it's doesn't really make sense to completely destroy the kitchen if your cabinets are decent. What's your thought on like replacing countertops? Do you think it's best to just go ahead and go with granite, or?
So some type of solid surface countertop, because they're hard to tear up. And I'll give you a perfect example. I have a friend that VRBOs are used to. VRBO his lake house, and he rented it out to the weekend to a large family, and he did not. He had new countertops but they were not solid surface. They were a Formica countertop basically, and he spent quite a bit of money on for what they were, and they were cutting. We're not. He doesn't know exactly what they were cutting. They didn't use a cutting board and just destroyed his countertops, and you're less likely to do that. And of course, the $500 security deposit didn't even come close to replacing what needed to be done. So, in that type of situation, unfortunately, when you're an investor or property managing things, you have to, some of the things are going to get dinged up, and that's just part of people living in a house. So protecting your investment, yeah, solid surface countertops would be the first thing I would look at, when it comes to a kitchen and upgrading. Like you said, solid cabinets, you can sand and paint and make them look brand new. Maybe possibly add some new doors if you're really concerned about updating the look of things. But countertops would be the first thing on the list when it comes to that. And they're not overly expensive. If you go with like a quartz, a countertop, you don't have to put uh, a $60 square foot granite, countertop in a rental property for sure.
Right, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
can't tell you how many times I've gone walked through a property, and right next to the sink, you'll see the burn spot where the tenant took the pot and just sat it on the countertop on the formica, and it leaves a, left a little
sure,
burn spot.
absolutely.
It's just,
Or burning a candle. I've seen that too, where they burn a candle and they just let it go and go and go, and it got so hot that it burnt the countertop as well. I've seen that as well. And then, yeah, the solid surface is the way to go on that for sure.
and sometimes these remodels can be kind of expensive.
Yes, sir.
50,000 dollars doesn't get you as far as it used to.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What kind of what would you suggest as financing options for a landlord that might need to spend that kind of money, and maybe they don't just have that sitting in the bank right now.
Sure. Well, the most probably the most popular is some type of home equity loan. If you're getting into the real estate buying game to own rental properties, I'm not the first and foremost expert on that, but I do know a few people that are well versed in that. And one of the things they told me is you've got to have a line of credit, um, just for when that deal pops up that you just can't. Uh, you need, like this is a great opportunity, and you better have access to some quick cash to go swoop it up. And you also would be smart to have, the cash when you need to, or quick access to cash, um, if you need to do some renovations to one. You know, um, let's say you have a tenant that does some damage to a property and flooring, and that's another one I kind of skipped over when we started talking about countertops, but some type of solid flooring in a house. I would never recommend anybody have carpeting in a rental property because that's going to get that can get messed up real quick. Some type of
What
solid,
kind of flooring did you say? I missed that.
like a vinyl plank, LVP, or
Oh,
even
okay.
tile. A wood look tile is pretty popular and pretty indestructible, and easy to clean. Even pet people with pets and pets messing on the on the ground is pretty easy to clean up on that. So and we kind of went backwards on that, but if you go in and you need to replace some flooring or have the house painted, it's nice to be able to have access to a few thousand real quick. But there's some options out there, and we've partnered with a bank that kind of specializes in home renovations. The key to them is they're very straightforward, and their interest rates are not as sexy low as some of the what you might call big box lenders that advertise that they're in the home renovation space for lending. The problem with those big box lenders is they hook you with this low interest rate, but they charge dealer fees, and some as high as 30%. So if you take a $10,000 project, they're going to add another $3,000 on top of it in dealer fees, where it's actually more cost effective to maybe pay another point higher or point and a half higher on an interest rate, um, and not pay the dealer fees because you're not really financing 10,000, you're financing 13,000, and they just kind of hide that stuff in there, and it's not always the best option. So uh, and it's typically a fairly easy process too. Um, anytime we've had to have a customer get some type of financing for some type of renovation project, usually they've got an answer within days of whether or not they're approved.
That
So
makes
that
sense. Yeah. So I was going to ask you a little bit about bids. How can a landlord or a property owner make sure that they're getting an accurate bid?
well, first and foremost, communication is key, and knowing exactly what your expectations are as the customer, making those decisions up front. One of the worst things as the customer you can do is continuously change your mind, because that gets expensive quick. So you really need to have a clear cut idea of what you want, and ask a lot of questions. Do some research. There's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, YouTube is full of a lot of misinformation, but it's full of a lot of good information too as to what goes into a project. If you're not experienced, ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Ask is just keep asking and keep asking questions, and make sure that you've got a lot of clarity onto what's going to go into this project, the type of material that are going to be used, the process, how long is this going to take. It either the project goes off without a hitch and goes exactly the way you would draw it up, and it ends up taking way less time than what you told the customer, because you always want to build a buffer in for those things that are unforeseen
Mm-hmm.
or take longer than what you expect. And then there's those jobs that take longer than what you could have imagined, because at every turn you ran into some type of issue. I mean, for example, we had an exterior paint job that I told the customer, hey, this will only take us 2 days. Well, it ended up taking us uh, 3 days, and the reason is our sprayer went down, and we had to go get another one, and that's just all there was to it. And by the time it was too late in the day to come back and finish, so we had to come back the next day. Now that's a small delay in a project, but it's just an example of things that can happen that are out of your control. But as far as the customer goes, ask ask questions, write them down, unless you've just got a photographic memory. And then when you do get a bid, ask questions again. Be specific. Uh, about what you want, and when you're talking about materials, I had this conversation with a customer earlier today. He had half a dozen different questions about some faux shutters we were going to put on the front of their house, you know and just kept on and kept on. And that's fine. I want him to understand exactly what he's getting, because that's the worst thing as a contractor, is to think you've communicated what you're going to do to a customer, and the job's done, and you expect to show up and the customer be ecstatic about the work you've done, and you're wanting to get paid, and they're not happy because it wasn't what they thought they were
Mm-hmm.
going to get. That's no fun. So over communication, and that is key.
Right. Randy, I think you had mentioned permits before we were talking here. How do you how do you manage those when is that going to be up to the customer, or do you get involved with the pulling permits aspect of it, or how does that
Now,
work?
we as a contractor, so most municipalities require um, a contractor to have a contractor's license. And to have a contractor's license with that municipality, you have to show them proof of workers' comp and general liability insurance, that you're valid. And any certifications or licenses that may be required by the Construction Industries Board or the state have to be up to date. Now, if you're a homeowner DIYing it, obviously you don't necessarily have to have all of that stuff. Some things the city may require a permit for, and then, of course, in that case, if they're DIYing it, they would be responsible. But we take care of all the permitting. And it's funny you asked that, is because Oklahoma City actually just in the last few weeks has started requiring permits for roof replacements.
Yeah, they didn't used to ask for that, did they?
No, and to be honest with you, and there's no real benefit to that to the homeowner. It's just generating revenue for the city,
The city, yeah.
because I promise you, they're not going to send an inspector out to check and see if your roof was put on properly. That's not going to happen. Um, but again, most municipalities, if they're big enough, and most of them in the Oklahoma City metro area are big enough to have uh, full-fledged building and code enforcement departments, and they want you to be at least registered with contractor. And permits are really they're not expensive. That's just another step in the process that you have to do, and sometimes they can delay the project.
Right.
On
Now, Randy, weren't you telling me a story about a roofing contractor that recently tore off shingles, and then they just had a whole bunch of rain and it almost ruined a house?
it didn't almost. It's actually a friend of mine in Tulsa that owns a very large, very reputable company, and um, they had a bunch of projects going on that day, and they had potential for some rain, and had reached out to all of their project managers and said, "Pump the brakes. We're going to wait for this little storm front to pass through, and then we can continue." And I think I'm not exactly sure what happened, but yeah, the crew didn't get the message. Let's just say it that way. And
Hmm.
they removed the roof system from the roof, and it came a pretty good storm, and it caused several thousands, I believe, well into the six figures, thousands worth of damage to the interior of this home. But that's why you carry general liability
That's why
insurance
you got the insurance.
of at
Yeah.
least $1 million, because you know I, mistakes or bad judgment will happen when you have the human element involved in doing things.
Right.
And yeah, uh, that was a bad experience. I know for him. I didn't ask a whole lot of questions because he didn't seem real eager to talk about it too much. But
Yeah.
it's part of doing business, and you will have mistakes, and that's another thing. Kind of again going backwards, uh, customers things that they need to do. Ask contractor to provide proof. It happens most of the time. People just ask me, "Hey, are you guys are insured?" Yeah, we are insured. I've had a couple ask me to provide proof, and by all means, ask. Ask to provide proof of a certification. Um, each uh, it's called an accord statement, um, and it outlines all the limits of liability, and show from their insurance agent. Ask them to get their insurance agent to send it to you, not just have. Don't just let the contractor get it to you, because they can falsify.
Hmm.
I've actually seen it done before, um, and that a subcontractor falsified insurance. Now, if you get it directly from their insurance agent, I promise you it's not falsified, because an insurance agent's not going to take the risk of falsifying a document,
Right.
because they would be held liable. So ask for that. Make sure that the people coming in to do work on or in your home are covered, because things can happen. And you, as a homeowner, or as a residential property owner, you could be held liable at some point if somebody got hurt working on your house, and they were a subcontractor of a general contractor, and they got hurt, heaven forbid, even worse than hurt, and your contractor and your subcontractors are not insured, they're going to go looking for somebody to pay for something. And
Hmm.
as the homeowner, you could be held liable. So
Right.
you need that protection. Um, in the Make sure that you've got copies of that stuff.
Okay. Well, Randy, just off the top of your head, what would you say your top three tips are for real estate investors when they're when they're looking at doing a remodel?
Well, most of it we've already talked about here is, do your research on your contractor and make sure that, you're picking the right person. Don't make your decision solely on price. You'll probably not be happy with what you're getting. Make sure that at, there's plenty of information out there about real estate and real estate investing. And honestly, even if you're a homeowner, you're investing in real estate. You're buying a house. That's your biggest. You hear it all the time. It's your biggest investment, and that's exactly what it is. You're investing in real estate. So there's plenty of information online about the best ROI. Does this make sense? Does a 50 or $100,000 kitchen remodel make sense to do on this $1,000 house? It does not. It does not make sense. Okay, maybe a $20,000 kitchen remodel makes sense. Do the math on it. And if you want a $100,000 kitchen remodel, by all means, do it.
You're willing to do that, aren't you?
If you're willing to do it, I'm willing to do the work for you, and I'll take your check. I might advise you against it, but if you're dead set on it, let's get it done. And just like I said, over communicate what your expectations are, and ask a lot of questions. I think so. The biggest thing that I could tip I could give you as far as getting into a project, when you find a contractor, find one you can trust. Okay. And then when you develop that trust, listen to them. This is the negative side of there being so much information on the internet, is you can become an expert real quick, in quotations. Um, if your contractor does this for a living every day. So listen to what they're telling you. If they're telling you that it can't or shouldn't be done, you should probably listen to them. They're gonna hopefully advise you what your best course of action is to for your project. If they're telling you you don't need something, I had a lady yesterday just ask me this 5 times in a 45-minute conversation. You're sure I don't need this? And I finally said to her, I was like, I'm positive, because I promise you, if it needed it, I would tell you, because I could charge you to do that. And it was an insurance project. It's a really good profit center for her. So what she was asking me about, it was about a decking upgrade. And she asked me 5 times because somebody else had told her she needed new decking. I inspected it. I'm like, you're good. Your decking is up to code and is in great shape and does not need to be replaced. And she just could not wrap her mind around the fact that she did not need new decking. And like I said, I told her, um, if you needed it, I would tell you, but she didn't. And so, um, listen to your contractor, what they're telling you.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Randy's a really good contractor, and he's actually looking at a project for me tomorrow. Randy, if somebody out there listening to this wants you to take a look at a project and maybe give them a bid, what should they do?
Well, of course, websites, spartanroofingok.com. Same thing on Instagram and Facebook. We have all of that. If you Google Spartan Roofing, it's the only one that's going to show up. That's why I picked the name. It's kind of an off the wall name, but I wanted something that somebody would never forget, right? So just Wilson Construction didn't really sound all that memorable. It's kind of a common name. So yeah.
Is there a number they can call, or is it a website?
Yeah, there's numbers, and we have multiple numbers that are on our website, and we do that to try to filter out all the spam calls. If you go Google everything, it either goes straight to the office admin, or sometimes it comes straight to my cell phone.
Okay.
If she's busy, calls will forward directly to my cell phone.
All right.
So and I give all of my customers my direct cell phone, and I answer my phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's
Well,
always
Randy,
on.
I really appreciate you hopping on here. I've learned some things. I've gotten a
Thanks for
little
having.
bit smarter just by talking to you here today. I appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate you having us on, Scott.
All right. Take care, Randy. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.